Now, on the third installment of research questions, hypothesis formulation and hypothesis formulation. We're still working on these two learning objectives. Research questions have two types. We have the testable research question and the non-testable research question. The non-testable research question do not require testing them or answering them with any form of statistics. They are usually well placed to be used with qualitative data collection method. Remember, we talked about quantitative and qualitative in the previous classes. So, non-testable research question. The best way you can get a grasp of it is think of some of the questions we have here. How do residents perceive the municipal waste management process in Choba? So which means if you need to collect information about their perception, you can interview the residents and let them give you their judgment about what they think of the waste management process. So which means you need to clearly highlight what are the steps, the aspect of the process you want them to say what they think about. Is it how often it is collected? Is it about how they get to put it in at the collection points? What you need to ask them questions so that they can express themselves. So this kind of question, you do not have to do any statistical testing because you are just interested in what do they feel. So you allow people to talk about what they feel. So you give them open-ended question and you let them talk. So at the end of it, you can summarize and say, this is how most people feel. Some people feel like this. Some people are critical of this. So you can still answer your questions with the answers they have given you. What do residents of Riversdale feel are the environmental problems facing their communities? So you can investigate and answer what are the problems they think they are facing in terms of environmental problems. So you can talk to people and they can give you information, they can express to you what they think are, what they feel. So most of the time when you are asking non-testable question, you are not going to be able to carry out any statistical testing in order to answer this question. They do not require statistical testing. So if your work is something that you collected qualitative data, then you have to think carefully. Before you start, you must ask questions that are suitable for qualitative data collection approach. So all these are examples. For example, if I say what is the concentration of bicarbonate in groundwater, I'm just interested in knowing. So we can state the average, we can state the highest concentration and the lowest, where we found the highest, so things like that. We do not need to do any statistical testing to compare and contrast and so on. So when you ask non-testable research question, the answers you are going to get cannot provide any objective cutoff point for decision maker. What do we mean by that? There is no way we can say that what you observed in this community and what you observed in another community are significantly different from one another. In essence, there is no way we can confirm whether what you have observed is due to random chance or it is actually an observable differences or similarities. So these kind of questions are not very amenable to having objective cutoff points, so that we say, okay, this is the limit that we think that things are bad and this is the limit that we think it is acceptable. So when you use these questions, you have to have at the back of your mind that it's difficult to use this kind of the answers and these questions to be able to make policy decision, because you are involved in the process of collecting the data. The people might be expressing bias, so there is no way to really be objective about the result you are going to get. That is why it is not that suitable for decision making. Then, if we look at testable research question, testable research question means that you are going to use statistical techniques to actually answer those questions. Those kind of questions usually checks, are there differences between or among different groups? Are there relationship? And so on. So these kind of questions, you need to subject them to statistical testing. So most of the time, these kind of questions requires that you collect data using quantitative techniques. So you are going to measure things. You are going to use numbers to collect the data. If we look at an example, is there a statistically significant difference between upland and riverine respondents in River State with respect to environmental problems facing their community? So which means I could sample 20 upland communities and a kind of also representative number of riverine communities, sample their respondents proportionally, and look at how often across these communities, how often do we see environmental problems being mentioned, and then we can compare them. How many times are the frequencies of environmental problems being mentioned? Are the frequencies different from upland compared to riverine? Are there differences? So we can look at answering that, because if we see a statistically significant difference, then the conclusion will be that what the upland people are feeling as problems is significantly different from what the riverine people are feeling. Intuitively, we will say yes, there should be that, but we need to actually prove it and back it up with data and evidence. So when you have testable research question, there must be particular numbers and data, quantitative data, to back it up. Is there a statistically significant relationship between pH and bicarbonate concentration in groundwater in Niger Delta? So we want to see whether there is an association or relationship between these two across a particular place. Is there a positive relationship between IQ score and GPA, grade point average, among postgraduate students at the University of Port Harcourt? These are questions that requires you to collect quantitative data. So you must adopt quantitative techniques in your data collection. If we look at the last one, is there a statistically significant relationship between personality traits and occurrence of domestic violence across low-income households in Port Harcourt City? We are trying to see whether the personality traits affect or is related to the occurrence of domestic violence across a specific group of people, low-income households. So these are examples of testable research questions. Remember, non-testable research question, you usually use qualitative data collection technique to answer them. Testable research question, you usually use quantitative data collection technique or approaches to collect data. One requires statistical testing, that is the testable, and the other one does not require statistical testing, that is the non-testable. So testable, statistical testing; non-testable, no need for statistical testing. Thank you.